What's up, guys? Welcome to the Resource Podcast with Tech and Sports and Daily Refinement. Today, we've got some really good topics. We want to talk about long-term thinking for your eBay store. We want to talk about why listing takes so long for a lot of people. Thinking like an owner. We're going to talk about new tags versus pre-owned. We're going to talk about fixed income for a lot of people and how that's affecting sales, and then sort of the plans for the next 12 months. So I want to start with long-term thinking because I really like this. When you think about doing things for a long time or permanent, you really are thoughtful when you think, what is my photo setup? What's my listing procedure? What do I want to sell? Long-term thinking is very different than chasing specialty Oreos from Walmart to Walmart. You're not going to do that forever.
Yeah, totally. I think that maybe the best word for long-term thinking is that you're very careful. So since everything that I want to do for as long as possible, I'm very, very careful with making any sort of changes or introducing anything. So chasing Oreos is not forever. So I don't even consider doing it. Implementing something into the process or making a hire or making a change, that's long term, that's forever. So I am very, very careful when I consider making any sort of changes. So, I want to try to do this as sustainable as possible for as long as possible. So that's why everything that I do consider takes a very long time for me to implement.
I agree with that. It's the same, there's been a lot of chatter in the group about work-life balance. I think one of the secrets to that is thinking permanent. You're with this person forever. So do things forever. If you're going to building trust over time, it's the same thing with your relationships, with your suppliers. Everything is all about permanent long-term solutions, because then you can build upon that. Like if you divide your roles at home, you can count on that person to do that. And it takes weight off your shoulder. If you hire a photographer, you're essentially taking that off your plate. That long-term thinking is huge.
Right. And if you're careful, that's the opposite of being squirrel brain. Squirrel brain is impulsive. Squirrel brain is knee jerk reaction. Squirrel brain is chasing a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
And when you're impulsive, when you're always on the chase, that's not forever because you can't run forever. You can't be impulsive forever. You can't be, running after the next big thing or see a shiny bike at the flea market and buy it and make a couple $100 because you can only find that bicycle one time that makes you a couple $100. You can't go to the flea market and find that bicycle every single time. So in order to have that kind of business of finding that bicycle every single time, that's when you need to take the careful consideration and figure out the processes on how to acquire bicycles every single time. But anything impulsive is going to be the opposite, in my opinion, of a long-term thinking mentality of being careful, methodical with your business to make sure that when you are growing, you're growing safely and everything is always going to be nice and smooth because you have plans in motion and then you also have backup plans for when things go wrong. So I think that, the more careful thinking, the more slowly the approach is, I think you're going to be way better off in the long run, not only with this, but, really with anything.
That's the perfect segue into why listing takes so long. Listing takes a long time because when you buy a bicycle that you've never listed before, there's 35 things that you need to check on the bike that are working before you decide to list it. And there's 35 reasons why it could be returned. You also have no idea how to ship it. So that's why listing takes such a long time, because you don't know any of the item specifics. You don't know any of the reasons it would be returned. You don't know any of the shipping reasons. You have no idea how to price it. There's so many things that contribute to listing time versus if you are a one trick pony, you're just buying a different variation of something you've already listed. You know all those things that trip people up when it comes to time.
Sure. And that would be, being careful with sorting or, being careful to acquire the knowledge on how to list things correctly. And, as long as you have like a understanding of the listing process and the sourcing process, you know, it doesn't take a long time to list anymore. But when you don't understand how to list a bike, or you don't fully understand the listing process and the workflow in the listing, that's where people get caught up and it takes a long time to list. So, no matter the niche, if you haven't mastered the listing process and know what every single one of those boxes mean and how important it is, or maybe not important those boxes are, that's when things end up taking a very long time. But if you have a perfect understanding of everything that you need to fill out for the items that you are to list, you're going to zip through listings very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring up an example. We had Michael in the group who lists toys, and you mentioned that you could list toys that you have never heard of faster than him as a toy category expert, because of the listing flow is a little different for you, and the way that you look at things and price things and the way that you categorize and grade things is maybe more, it's not more sophisticated, maybe it's more direct the way that you do it.
Right. So, Mike was listing 20 a day and he was doing that for a long time and having trouble get over that hurdle. And, when you're in the toy category, you have to be like very knowledgeable across a wide range of different toy lines, different items, a bunch of different things like that. But, just being expert aside, you can't be an expert in 6,000 toy lines. It's not possible. So, Michael, he was doing 20 a day for a long time, couldn't get over the hurdle, but the hurdle for him was mostly mental. And, when I told him, I said, I could list 30 toys a day faster than you can list 20 toys a day. Like it just got through that last mental hurdle of like, you know, I was the one who was stopping me from doing this because I was getting bogged down with, deviating from the path of actually focusing on listing, taking a lot of time researching, taking a lot of time doing a lot of things that didn't involve pressing the blue button of getting a listing up. And once he crossed that mental hurdle, he's been doing 30 a day for the last couple of weeks without issue. And like a lot of it is like our own mental capacity, where like a lot of people say like, I can only do this, or I can only list this, or I can only list whatever, 10, 5, 50. Like if you could list 10, you could do 20. If you could do 20, you could do 40. Like you understand how to do it. It's just pushing yourself a little bit beyond that, if that's what you choose to do.
It's also this concept of I want my listing to be perfect is not real. You can't make your listing perfect. You can make it accurate, go through the different item specifics, but pricing an item perfectly is very much an art. You just take a ballpark. You ballpark things accurately. And I think that's a huge plus. If you're not sure to price the item between $40 and $50, you could save time and just put 44.99 and move on to the next listing. Some people
Sure.
spend another 4 minutes on that process.
Sure. And something that I would price for 44, maybe you would price for 24. So everyone's going to have a different business model and a different approach. And there's no
Mhm.
right or wrong way to do it. If you want to price 84 and I'm pricing 44, it might just take you 4 years to sell the item. And if that's your business model, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's how you want to run your business. But somebody else might price that at 24.99, and maybe they sell it in one day, maybe I sell it in 3 months. We all have different pricing strategies and business models, and that's the beautiful thing about running this business, that like everything eventually will sell. It just, what is your pain tolerance for how long you want things to hang around for, and then that's the market that you decide to price your items at.
So I'm going to weave in a question from Deborah, who is talking about the fact that her husband is only home 2 months out of the year. And so that may cut into her eBay time. And she's wondering, is eBay going to cut her sales out? So this is, to me, is the same question as why is listing so slow? Essentially what happens is it's an exception to the rule. Maybe 10 months of the year you operate one way, 2 months of the year you operate a different way. eBay operates the same all year. So if you change your behavior, of course, the traffic is going to change. You have to plan ahead because you have to have 2 months ready of drafts. You can't really do 2 months of drafts, but you have to be ahead of the game and know that there is going to be some sacrifice, of course, because you can't take 2 months off of your eBay business, but you have to plan ahead, because if you already knew it's the same 2 months every year, you can kind of plan ahead for that.
Yeah, you could do as best as you can. You could do maybe save some in drafts, save some in scheduled listings,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also going to have to source, 2 months more of inventory.
Yep.
And, that might be a larger task than getting the items up. So, if you decrease your listings, it's not the end of the world at the end of the day. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. You have to make the plan that you want to make. And if that's the plan that you guys want to do, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But, if you do want to start planning ahead to kind of minimize those 2 months, just do the best that you can. Use the tools like the draft bank, use the schedule listing, and just that's your business. Your business is, go as hard as you want to go for 10 months, and then for the 2 months you don't go as hard. And that's the beautiful thing about eBay, is that you know you can build the business around the life that you guys want to live and that everybody wants to live, and there's no right or wrong way to do it.
I want to point out that people who have worked a variable based income or a commission based income, if you have worked at a company where you only get paid on how many bids you have or how many sales you have, those people react better with eBay because eBay does not give you the same number of sales every day. It's a little bit higher or lower every day. It's always variable. So if somebody is home variably and that's part of your life, or your life is hectic, that means your work is a little bit hectic and it's going to be up and down. If you have the luxury of your week always being the same, then your income will almost always be the same, plus or minus 10%. It's going to be very similar. But if you're used to, like, some companies, they don't get paid. If you're a real estate agent, that's got to be really random income. So you're used to, being frugal when you're not getting sales, and then maybe putting a little bit more away when you do get sales. That's different though than people who come from a 9 to 5 and have always made the same every week. They panic on eBay because it doesn't work like that.
Totally. And if you have variables in your week every single week, it's just bangs home the importance of the draft bank. If
Mhm.
you are super consistent and your week is the same every single week, you don't necessarily have to carry any draft bank. You don't have to have such a large draft bank. But if things change, and if you have deviation from a standard week, you're going to have a larger draft bank to get you through those days where the days are different or the weeks are different. And eBay allows us to hold a good amount of drafts for the average person, where you can throw up 1,000 of them, and as long as they're listed anytime in the next 30 days, they'll be fine. And if you work backwards from your drafts, you could theoretically can't carry a 1,000 item draft bank forever. And there's
Yeah.
not that many people that can blow through 1,000 drafts and still not be able to get listings up after that. Like, that would be a monumental variation from your schedule to blow through 1,000 drafts and then not have anything to do after that.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to point out, this is another good segue for Jax's question on, do we have any plans for the next 12 months? I think you should plan 12 months ahead, just in general. Like, having that type of mentality allows you to plan. If you have vacations and you know about it now for next year, you can start planning for it. If it's really, really difficult when unexpected things happen, and they always do, but planning a year ahead, I think, is mandatory. Like, I already have most of my supply figured out for next year. I'm hoping that I can get an extra person. I think, we talked about this earlier before the call started. What happens if one of your workers doesn't come? Yes, today, one of my workers, this is horrible. Her roommate's dog jumped out of the car while it was moving and got hit by a car. You know how, like, you always see people's dogs hanging out the window? It actually jumped out. The worst case scenario happened. She was a wreck. She left. So, but what happens to your business when that happens?
Right.
The only thing you could do is literally have someone that doesn't do anything hop in when that emergency happens. That would be the only way you could keep it from damage control. But I think big companies, they have to do that. Starbucks has to have an extra worker that's not doing anything.
Yeah, or somebody on call, but on
Yep.
call is very flaky and very difficult to do,
Yep.
because, like, who's going to be on call for your business that's up and running 99% of the time?
Yep.
So, like, it's not really realistic. So, you know, you just have to have redundancies, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
have the draft bank. If you have the draft bank, your dog can get hit by a car and you can still hear your listing go if that's what you choose to do.
That's
But
right.
like, if you're running through those drafts faster than you're putting them up, that's when you have a big problem. So like for me, one of the girls is going to be off Thursday and Friday. It couldn't come at worse timing because last week was Thanksgiving and everyone had off 2 days last week.
Mhm.
So my draft bank is a little bit depleted and I've been fighting every day to get it up. So, the next 2 days and then after that, the weekend is really going to be a struggle. But, somehow, some way, going to get it done, going to get the listings up. And, we'll live to see another day next week. And then, next week we have to start building up the draft bank again because, they're going to want Christmas off or a few days around Christmas. So, that's the short-term plan is we have to get these listings up into the draft bank because we have days off coming up. And, the long-term plan, I think I'm more like the doom and gloom guy, but like it's December 1st at the time of this recording and I ain't seeing Q4 to be honest with you. So, I think a lot of people are going to tighten up next year. I think a lot of people may tighten up for the rest of this year.
Mhm.
And the way the economy is going, the way inflation is going, the way everything is going, I think next year, if we're going to forecast 12 months ahead within our business, we also have to tighten up. There's a lot of stuff that everybody has in their business that they can trim the fat and run a more lean business. And
Mhm.
if the buyers aren't buying because they're paycheck to paycheck, because their costs have increased, their groceries are now $350 instead of $275, all that stuff rolls downhill to us. And then still until things turn around and everything catches up, next year might be a very lean year for a lot of people. And there may not be no stimulus like there was for the last 2 years. So they can't do stimulus forever. They can't print 80% of all the money in one year. They've already printed 40% of all the money in one year. They can't continue printing money. At some point, it has to stop and correct itself. So it is going to come. If you're a first year reseller, you pick the best year in the world to be a first year reseller. But like not every year was like this year. Like they released stimulus and tax checks at the same time. The summer for me was my busiest time of the year, which
Mhm.
normally that's the slowest time. So, I think if we're really going to forecast, I would forecast for next year, unless they release a stimulus. If they release a stimulus, throw this last 2 minutes in the garbage can. But if they do not release a stimulus, I think next year is going to be a very, very tight year for a lot of people. And that's how I'm planning my business. I'm not planning for money falling through the sky like it was this year.
I agree with that. I've had more comments on my YouTube channel about I'm on a fixed income. What do you recommend? If you're on a fixed income, I recommend you learn how to earn some income. Because if you're looking around and everything is more expensive and your income is the same, I would be really worried. And I think a lot of people, I don't think sales are slow. I think people are broke. I
Right.
mentioned that they're now offering financing as low as $10. I didn't
Yeah.
know that that would exist, but for somebody, at Walmart or Target, financing groceries might be their reality. They're not shopping on eBay.
Right. Totally. Or even the person whose grocery bill went up and all the real estate went up. So all the rent is going up,
Yep, that's right.
everything is going to go up. And if people get squeezed, we're going to get squeezed. Luckily, if you're selling pre-owned,
Yep,
I don't think we're gonna see like the full effect of it because
yep,
people, when they have a lot of money, maybe they spend a lot of money on eBay. When they don't have a lot of money, people still want to look fly. So they buy pre-owned on the cheap and they can still look fly. But you know, somehow, some way, there may not be enough money to go around to make it a very fruitful year. It might be a year where we just all have to, be very lean and just get through it until everything, kind of evens out and then we can do business as normal. But, everything goes in cycles. We haven't had any sort of regression in 15 years. So like it's got to be time where everything starts slowing down a little bit and all the pieces are lining up to where things are going to slow down.
I want to talk about something that Stacy just brought up. that bankruptcies are down 40%, and her law firm can't figure out why. Well, I'll tell you something interesting here. Right now, there's always we talk a lot about the book E-Myth Revisited, where you're the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician in your business. Well, now that businesses are slim, you're seeing principals that normally did not do anything jump into the company and start working because their staff has been trimmed. So all the fat from people's companies is being chopped. They're going from 5-person operations to 2-person operations, and the owner is now working. And in every single business, the owner does a better job than the people working there usually. So it wouldn't surprise me if some companies are more profitable right now because the owner is working and they've trimmed the fat. There's
Well,
tons of companies that are record profits right now. So
totally.
it's very interesting.
A lot of companies got hurt by the pandemic. A lot of companies thrived in the pandemic. You can make
Mm-hmm.
an argument that eBay sellers thrived in the pandemic. When all the
Mm-hmm.
stores were closed, we were beneficial. But if you had a takeout restaurant or if you had a sit down restaurant, you wouldn't have that same conversation. You got smacked during the pandemic. So, as far as bankruptcies, everybody had a lot of money. We had stimulus. We had, they were giving out grants and loans, small business grants, small business loans. There was a long time where you didn't even have to pay your mortgage. There was mortgage forbearance, and there's no penalty to that. Everyone thought, oh, everyone's going to get foreclosed. The real estate market is going to fall down. They had mortgage forbearance. And if you didn't pay, they said, no problem, refinance, and we'll put it on the back end. So there was no penalty to even not even paying the mortgage. That's why real estate has continued to go up, because nobody got foreclosed on. And if no one's getting foreclosed on, they're handing out small business grants and loans to everybody. They're handing out stimulus. Nobody's bankrupt anymore. But if you had to pay your mortgage, you might be in a different situation where maybe you do have to file Chapter 7 or something. But if you didn't pay for 11 months, 13 months, and now they say, hey, refinance at a lower rate, we'll give you money, and then just throw those payments you missed on the back end, those guys came out ahead.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. There's still PPP loans being forgiven now. So I mean, a lot of that money people are not having to pay back, and they trimmed. And also, this is something that's interesting for eBay. In the beginning, when the pandemic happened, I think a lot of retailers were caught off guard. By now, a lot of them have online presence. It's been a
Right.
while. They now have an online store in a warehouse, and they've cut a lot of overhead. Imagine, you know, your the companies I think they got hit the hardest have to be like discount retail. Like what happened to Ross and Marshalls and TJ Maxx during this pandemic when they couldn't get anything from the suppliers and they can't be open.
Well, there was an article that Under Armour, Nike, and all those big brands put TJ Maxx and Ross on the alert
Yeah.
and said they're not even going to have enough overstock to send them, because they can barely
Mm,
reach their own quotas for their own stores. So if you're in the retail arbitrage TJ Maxx and Ross game, it might be getting slim pickings over there coming up too, because if Nike can barely meet their own demand, they're not going to have enough to send out to all these other discount stores. And a lot of their a lot of the stores that aren't Nike flag stores, they're just, shoe stores, they've been getting cut out for their orders. There was an article posted where they canceled orders all the way through 2023. And what you have to think about also is, like, if Nike is having a hard time reaching their orders, they're one of the biggest companies in the world. Like, what happens to Hoka? What happens to Allbirds? What happens to Skechers? What happens to all these companies that aren't as big as Nike? They're not going to be able to reach their quota if
yeah.
Nike themselves can't even reach their quota, and they have all of their own supply chain, all of their own warehouse, all of their own workers. A smaller company like, I don't know, Hoka or something, they might be subdividing a warehouse, or they might be outsourcing production at this point. So, like, all of these companies may have a very difficult time. Never mind the supply chain, all those boats that are parked out in the ocean,
Mhm.
they might not even be able to get product onto the boats. And if that's the case, if you're selling Hoka, the price may go up on pre-owned, but eventually we're going to run out of pre-owned to sell once they all get gobbled up.
Apple is going to struggle to deliver an iPhone an Apple Watch or a MacBook before Christmas right
Yeah.
now.
Right.
So
Right.
they're saying like December 29th is the earliest they can even ship an Apple iWatch. That's like
Yeah.
one of the hottest items of the year. They can't even get it out till after Christmas. So this is a really interesting puzzle that's happening right now. So imagine you're a buyer at home and normally you're buying all this stuff and you're shopping the Black Friday deal. Now it says it's not even going to ship until December 29th. Buyer confidence is low too, just in general. They're not buzzing off of getting they're, coming off that high, the Black Friday sale, opening up stuff this week. I think most people didn't get anything yet.
Right. And if you have a like new Apple Watch, maybe the buyer comes to eBay for the like new Apple Watch that you can have
Mhm.
delivered by the end of the week.
Right.
So, it can also be beneficial to us, but a lot of buyers aren't quite trained to go pre-owned. But those that do think about that and make that decision, they can have the product on time. But it's going to get very difficult. It's going to get sketchy. And you also have to think, like, a lot of these companies are already moving into the secondhand market. Levi's started
Mm.
selling pre-owned.
Mhm.
Patagonia started or has their own pre-owned program. A
Yep.
lot of these companies have their own pre-owned program, but this might be the final push to really spend some money and start acquiring this pre-owned, because pre-owned is already here. There's no supply chain. There's no boat sitting in the water for pre-owned.
That's right.
And if they can start acquiring their pre-owned, they get to advertise sustainability, environmentally friendly. They get to do that, mark up the pre-owned, give them a very small store discount probably, and then sell this Levi's jacket for $150. That Levi's jacket is already on US soil. There's no supply chain. There's no workers. All it has to do is walk through the front door. So, a lot of companies are moving towards pre-owned. JJ said it. IKEA is opening up a pre-owned store. I read the article this morning. So, this might be the final push where these companies start pouring some money into the pre-owned market.
You're also seeing not only buyback programs, you're seeing trade-in programs.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Madewell release the trade-in jean program. So of course they'll buy your jeans back, but you could also trade. Maybe they'll give you a really outstanding pre-owned value to get you into a new pair of jeans.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting time because you're seeing bigger companies kind of get small because they're trying to cater to the secondhand explosion in every category. And of course, electronics trade-in is massive. Every single item at Best Buy, you can trade in something. So they're
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah. Trade in, store credit,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they offer them, it's going to be a low ball offer, because a
Yep.
lot of these buyers aren't educated in the actual value of their items. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
great deal for them. If you can offer store credit, a low ball store credit, you get their item and then they're still going to pay you money for the next item.
Mm-hmm.
It makes total sense. They just have to be able to figure it out. As a large company, like you said, they have to start thinking small and operating small. And, that's just going to be another one of those things. Like, if Levi's really goes out and starts marketing this hardcore, maybe people don't donate their Levi's. Maybe Levi's at the thrift, isn't as plentiful as it is now. Maybe these other companies start acquiring a lot of the stock that would normally go to us. And this is the thing, like, the brand George
Yep.
isn't buying back. That's going to the thrift.
That's true.
These higher end brands that we find at the thrift, Patagonia, stuff like that,
Yep.
they're buying back.
Right.
But George ain't buying back. Faded Glory ain't buying back.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to think 12 months, this is the stuff that you have to think about, because this is starting today. This has already started. This is the new reality going forward.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned, or we were talking about bigger stores getting small, and we've talked about on this podcast, even though it's unpopular, smaller stores getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying, you know what, and I was thinking even earlier this year when things were good, I was thinking things are good, but everything is getting more expensive. Jax mentioned that her rental unit's going to go up 50% in January. That's ridiculous. But they can do that because there's just not very much supply, still a lot of demand.
They have to, because the real estate probably traded at an all-time high.
That's right.
So in order for that new investor to get his money back, he has to go through and raise the rent. He has to do value add, raise the rent in order to get a proper ROI on his investment. And that's going to happen nationwide. Any real estate apartment that traded is guaranteed has to raise the rent because they didn't get the deal under market. They paid market or overpaid with the plan to raise the rent in order to get their money back. So, people who live in apartments, the rent is going up. And if the rent goes up for people that live in apartments, that's less money, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars per year that they have to spend as discretionary income to spend on eBay, to spend on Amazon, to spend everywhere because it's going right to the rent. After that, insurance goes up. After that, everything, all this stuff is going to go up. So, it's going to get thin. We in the group, we've been talking about this for a very, very long time. And, in order for us to be wrong, all of this stuff has to be wrong that we're talking about. Every single thing.
That's it for the free portion of our podcast. If you'd like to continue listening to the rest of the episode and our other 60 full-length episodes, please join us at patreon.com/the Resars Podcast. The link is in the description below. Talk to you soon.